I had always considered myself a practical man. My life was measured in schedules, deadlines, and familiar routines. Monday through Friday, I worked, went to the gym, cooked simple dinners, and fell asleep to the quiet hum of the city outside my window. Life was steady, predictable, safe. But deep down, I knew something was missing. I just didn't know what until the night I met her. It was a Friday evening in late spring, warm enough for people to stay out late, the streets humming with laughter and the sound of clinking glasses from open-air bars. I didn't have any particular plans, so I wandered into a cafe I rarely visited. It was small, tucked between a bookstore and a flower shop, with warm lights glowing through its windows. I thought I'd grab a coffee, maybe read something on my phone, and call it a night. But fate had something else in mind. The moment she walked in, the air shifted. She wasn't flashy or loud, but she had a presence that couldn't be ignored. Her hair was dark and loose, falling in waves that framed her face. She wore a simple blouse and jeans, yet she carried herself with quiet confidence. I found myself staring before I even realized it. She ordered her drink with an easy smile, and as she turned, her eyes met mine. For a second, the noise of the cafe faded away. She didn't look away immediately, instead, she held my gaze, as if testing me, daring me not to flinch. My chest tightened. I wasn't used to that kind of intensity. I looked back down at my coffee, pretending to be absorbed in it. When I glanced up again, she was scanning the cafe for a place to sit. Every table was taken except for mine. "Mind if I join you?" she asked, her voice calm but with a spark of playfulness. "Not at all," I said, trying to sound casual, though my pulse was racing. She sat across from me, setting her cup down gently. For a moment, we were silent, the air between us charged with something unspoken. Then she extended her hand. "I'm Emma." I shook it, giving her my name in return. Her hand was soft but firm, her grip confident. At first, we kept the conversation light, how the city seemed more alive in spring, how the cafe smelled like roasted beans and sugar, how work weeks had a way of dragging on endlessly. But within minutes, we slipped into deeper territory. We talked about books we loved, about how she was passionate about photography, about how I sometimes felt trapped in the very routines that kept me stable. She listened closely, her eyes focused, her smile small but genuine. Every time I said something that resonated with her, she would tilt her head slightly, like she was letting my words sink in. And when she laughed, a low, melodic laugh that came easily, it felt like music made only for me. I didn't notice how much time had passed until I saw the barista wiping down tables. The cafe had nearly emptied out. Outside, the streets had grown quieter. Yet neither of us made a move to leave. At one point, our hands brushed across the table when we both reached for the sugar. It was such a small thing, but the contact sent a jolt through me. Her lips curved into a knowing smile, as if she had felt it too. Eventually, we stepped outside together. The air was cooler, carrying the faint scent of blooming flowers from the shop next door. Street lights painted soft glows across the pavement. She pulled her jacket a little tighter and looked at me with that same quiet intensity from before. "Do you always spend your Fridays alone?" she asked. "Not always," I said, smiling. "But I'm glad I did tonight." She looked at me for a moment, as though weighing something. Then her smile returned, soft and almost secretive. "Maybe I'll see you here again." "You will," I promised. And just like that, she left. That night, I barely slept. My mind replayed everything: her laugh, her eyes, the way her presence had filled the space around me. It had been just one evening, yet it felt like more than coincidence. Something about Emma had unsettled the carefully built walls of my routine. And I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The week that followed dragged painfully slow. Every day felt longer than usual, every night restless. By Thursday, I had convinced myself that maybe she wouldn't come back, that maybe our encounter had been nothing more than chance. But when Friday arrived, I found myself at the cafe again, same table, same cup of coffee, heart pounding with a mix of hope and doubt. And then she walked in. She looked different that night. Her hair was tied back loosely, revealing the graceful lines of her neck. She wore a black dress, nothing extravagant, but elegant in its simplicity. When she saw me, her smile widened instantly, and I felt relief wash over me. She was here. She had chosen to be here. "Looks like you saved me a seat," she teased. "Or maybe I was hoping you'd save me from drinking alone again," I replied. She slid into the chair across from me, and just like that, the world outside disappeared. Our conversation that night was even easier than before. We spoke about dreams, hers of traveling across Europe with a camera, mine of breaking free from the dull predictability of my job. She asked questions that made me think, questions no one had bothered to ask me before. And when I returned the favor, she didn't hold back. She told me about her struggles, her fears, the mistakes that had shaped her. She wasn't trying to impress me. She was simply being real, and it was intoxicating. I found myself watching the small details again, the way her lips parted slightly when she was about to say something honest, the way her fingers traced the rim of her glass absent-mindedly, the way her eyes lingered on mine just a little too long. As the night wore on, the cafe emptied again, until it was just the two of us and the hum of the espresso machine. There was a moment of silence, heavy but not uncomfortable. She leaned forward slightly, her chin resting on her hand, studying me. "You're different," she said quietly. "How so?" "You listen," she replied. "Most people wait for their turn to talk. You actually listen." Her words caught me off guard. I wasn't used to being noticed like that. I felt a warmth in my chest, something deeper than attraction. When we finally stepped outside, the night was cool and quiet. I offered to walk her to her car, and she accepted. The short walk felt charged, every step filled with a growing tension neither of us wanted to break. At her car, we paused. She turned to me, her eyes catching the streetlight, her lips curving into the faintest smile. For a moment, I thought she might lean in closer. I wanted her to. My heart was beating so hard it drowned out the silence. But instead, she simply touched my arm gently. "Good night," she whispered. And just like the week before, she left me standing there, restless, wanting more. Over the next few weeks, meeting Emma became the highlight of my life. Some Fridays we went to the cafe, other times we walked through the park or grabbed late dinners at small restaurants she liked. Every time, I learned something new about her. She was fiercely independent but had a soft vulnerability she rarely showed. She laughed with her whole body, and when she was quiet, she had a way of pulling me into her silence without a single word. The attraction between us grew undeniable. There were moments when her hand brushed mine, when our shoulders touched as we walked, that left me breathless. Yet neither of us rushed it. There was a kind of delicious tension in holding back, in letting the anticipation build. One evening, as we sat on a bench overlooking the river, she leaned against me lightly, her head brushing my shoulder. The city lights reflected off the water, casting everything in a golden glow. "You know," she said softly, "I don't usually let people in this easily." I turned to look at her. "Why me, then?" She thought for a moment, her eyes distant, then met mine again. "Because with you, it doesn't feel like I have to try." My chest tightened. The urge to kiss her was overwhelming. But again, I held back, sensing that the moment needed more time, more weight. Still, I couldn't deny the truth anymore. Emma wasn't just someone I had met by chance. She was becoming someone I couldn't imagine not seeing again. And deep down, I knew this was only the beginning of something that would change me forever. The weeks that followed blurred into a rhythm I hadn't experienced before. My days still looked the same: work, routine, the usual, but my nights were alive with anticipation. Emma had become the highlight, the hidden current running beneath the surface of everything I did. We didn't make formal plans. Somehow, we just found each other. Friday nights were ours by unspoken agreement, and sometimes we met midweek when neither of us could wait. There was a magnetic pull I couldn't resist, and judging by the way she looked at me, she felt it too. One evening, we decided to skip the cafe and take a walk through the park instead. The air was cool, the sky painted in shades of violet and gold. We wandered along the path, talking about everything and nothing. Emma carried her camera, occasionally stopping to capture the way the light fell on the trees or the ripples on the lake. "You see details most people miss," I said as she crouched to photograph a single flower pushing through the grass. She glanced up at me with a mischievous smile. "Maybe I just pay attention to the things worth noticing." The way she said it made my chest tighten. I wasn't sure if she was talking about the flower or me. As the sun dipped lower, we sat on a bench overlooking the water. Emma leaned back, her hair spilling over her shoulders, and looked at me with that same intensity I was starting to crave. "Tell me something you've never told anyone," she said suddenly. I hesitated. The request was bold, but then again, so was she. "Something I've never told anyone," I repeated. "Yes. No filters. No rehearsed stories. Just, something real." I thought for a moment, then admitted quietly, "Sometimes I feel like I've been living life half asleep. Like I've been waiting for something to wake me up, but I don't even know what it is." Her eyes softened, and she shifted closer. "Maybe you were just waiting for the right person to shake you awake." The words lingered between us, charged and heavy. I wanted to reach for her, to close the distance, but again, I held back, savoring the slow burn of it. Instead, she rested her head lightly against my shoulder. The simple gesture sent warmth flooding through me. We sat there in silence, watching the water reflect the city lights, both of us caught in the weight of what we weren't saying. The first time Emma invited me to her apartment, it felt like stepping into a different world. Her place was small but full of personality: photographs lining the walls, stacks of books on the coffee table, candles that filled the air with a soft vanilla scent. It was cozy, intimate, and so very her. "Make yourself at home," she said, slipping off her jacket. I sat on the couch, trying to act casual while my heart raced. She poured us glasses of wine, then curled up beside me, her legs tucked beneath her. The space between us was small, and every movement she made brushed her against me. We talked, we laughed, and somewhere between one story and the next, the conversation shifted into quiet pauses. She looked at me differently now, her eyes softer, her smile slower, more deliberate. I could feel the tension building, a current pulling us closer. When she reached out to tuck a stray strand of hair behind my ear, her fingers lingered against my skin. The touch was light, but it set my pulse hammering. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then, almost without thinking, I leaned in. Our lips met softly at first, testing, exploring. Her breath hitched, and then she kissed me back with more certainty, more fire. The world seemed to fall away. Her hand slid to the back of my neck, pulling me closer, while mine found her waist, feeling the warmth of her body beneath the thin fabric of her shirt. It wasn't rushed, it was hungry but patient, a perfect reflection of all the weeks of unspoken tension between us. When we finally pulled apart, her eyes were bright, her lips slightly parted. "I was wondering how long it would take you," she whispered with a teasing smile. I laughed, breathless. I didn't want to ruin the moment. "You couldn't ruin it if you tried," she said, brushing her thumb lightly against my jaw. We kissed again, deeper this time, and for a while, words weren't necessary. From that night on, everything between us shifted. We were no longer just two people sharing conversations over coffee, we were something more, something dangerously intoxicating. The attraction that had been simmering beneath the surface now burned openly. But it wasn't just physical. What surprised me most was how much I craved her presence beyond the kisses and touches. I wanted to know her thoughts, her fears, her hidden corners. I wanted all of her. And she gave me pieces of herself slowly, like unwrapping a gift. Some nights she was playful, full of laughter and mischief. Other nights she was quiet, contemplative, her head resting on my chest as though she found peace in my heartbeat. Every side of her drew me in deeper. One evening, as we lay on her couch tangled together, she whispered, "You make me feel like I can breathe." I didn't respond right away. I just kissed her forehead, holding her tighter, because I understood exactly what she meant. She was doing the same for me. But with intensity comes risk. I could feel it building, the sense that we were heading towards something bigger, something that could change everything. And though part of me wanted to rush headlong into it, another part feared what would happen if it all came crashing down. Emma wasn't like anyone I had ever known. And I was beginning to realize that falling for her wasn't just a possibility, it was already happening. Being with Emma felt like living in a dream that I didn't want to wake up from. Days blurred into weeks, and soon my life had become a pattern of waiting to see her, of thinking about her even when I was supposed to be working, of imagining her laugh and the way her lips curved when she teased me. But the deeper we fell into each other, the more complicated it became. Passion has a way of stirring up not just desire, but fear, the fear of losing what suddenly feels irreplaceable. One Saturday evening, we decided to go out instead of staying in. Emma had suggested a small bar she liked, a place with dim lighting, soft jazz in the background, and just enough crowd to make it lively. She looked stunning that night in a fitted dress that clung to her curves in ways that made my throat dry. "You're staring," she teased as we slid into a booth. "Can you blame me?" I replied, unable to take my eyes off her. She smiled, but there was something in her eyes, mischief, maybe even challenge. As the night went on, we laughed, drank, and leaned into each other, completely lost in our own world. But I wasn't the only one who noticed her. A man at the bar kept glancing in our direction, his gaze lingering on her far too long. At first, I tried to ignore it, reminding myself she was with me, not him. But when he finally walked over and smiled at her, something hot and possessive surged inside me. "Emma," he said smoothly, clearly knowing her. I stiffened. She looked up and smiled politely. Mark. It's been a while. So they knew each other. I stayed quiet as they exchanged a few words. He was an old acquaintance, apparently. But the way he looked at her, like he was undressing her with his eyes, made my jaw tighten. Emma, to her credit, didn't encourage him. She kept her responses short, her body angled slightly toward me. Still, I hated the way it made me feel jealous, insecure, raw. When he finally walked away, Emma turned back to me with a small smile. Don't look so serious. He's nobody. I didn't like the way he looked at you, I admitted. Her smile widened, and she leaned closer, her hand sliding over mine under the table. Good. I like it when you care. The heat in her eyes told me she wasn't teasing. She liked the intensity, the possessiveness, the way I wanted her to myself. And in that moment, the jealousy melted into something else, something darker, more primal. We didn't stay much longer. As soon as we were outside, I pulled her close, my lips crashing against hers in a kiss that left us both breathless. She laughed against my mouth, her hands gripping my shoulders. Take me home, she whispered. Her apartment was dimly lit when we stumbled in, our bodies pressed together, lips searching hungrily. The weeks of slow burn had built to this point, and now neither of us seemed willing to hold back. Her hand slid under my shirt, nails grazing lightly against my skin, sending shivers through me. My fingers tangled in her hair as I kissed her deeper, the taste of wine still lingering on her lips. When we finally broke apart, both of us gasping for breath, she rested her forehead against mine. You have no idea how much I've wanted this, she whispered. Then don't stop, I murmured. And we didn't. The night was a blur of heat, whispers, and the kind of intimacy that stripped away every last barrier. It wasn't just about desire, it was about claiming and being claimed, about surrender and control all at once. By the time we collapsed onto the couch, tangled in each other, my chest was pounding with more than exhaustion. Something had shifted again. This wasn't just passion anymore, it was deeper, scarier. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the blinds, casting soft lines across the room. Emma stirred beside me, her hair a mess, her face still beautiful in its rawness. She opened her eyes slowly, catching me staring. What? She asked, her voice groggy but playful. Nothing, I said softly. Just, you. She smiled, rolling closer to rest her head against my chest. For a long time, we stayed like that in silence, the kind of silence that felt safe and complete. But as the days went on, I noticed small cracks forming. Emma had moods that shifted like the tide, sometimes warm and open, other times distant, lost in thoughts she didn't share. And when she pulled away, even slightly, it stirred an unease in me I couldn't control. One evening, after she cancelled our plans last minute, I found myself walking the streets aimlessly, restless. I didn't want to be the kind of man who doubted her, who clung too tightly. But the truth was, I was already in deeper than I'd intended. The fear of losing her gnawed at me, even as I told myself to relax, to trust her. But the more I cared, the harder it became to keep those fears at bay. The following week, we met again at her place. She greeted me with her usual smile, but I could sense something off beneath it. You've been quiet, I said gently as we sat down. Just tired, she replied, brushing it off. But I could see it in her eyes, something was bothering her. I wanted to press, but I didn't. Instead, I pulled her into my arms, kissing the top of her head. She melted into me, and for a while, the tension faded. Later that night, as we lay together, she finally whispered, "You scare me sometimes." The words startled me. "Scare you? How?" "You feel intense," she said softly. "Like you want all of me. And sometimes I don't know if I can give that." Her honesty cut deep. I wanted to argue, to tell her she already had all of me, that I couldn't help the way I felt. But instead, I just held her tighter, afraid that if I spoke, I might say the wrong thing. Because she was right. I did want all of her. And the thought of not having it was unbearable. That night, after she fell asleep in my arms, I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. Love wasn't supposed to feel like this, both exhilarating and terrifying, comforting and consuming. But maybe that's what made it real. And deep down, I knew I was already in too far to ever turn back. The deeper I fell for Emma, the harder it became to keep my emotions in check. What had started as playful attraction had grown into something heavier, more consuming. And while part of me craved that intensity, another part feared it might tear us apart. One Friday evening, Emma texted me last minute, "Not tonight. I need some space." The message was short, almost careless. I stared at it for a long time, my chest tightening. Space. The word echoed in my head like a warning bell. I wanted to ask why, to demand an explanation, but I didn't. Instead, I sent back, "Okay. Let me know when you're ready." But the truth was, I wasn't okay. I spent that night pacing my apartment, fighting with myself. Was I pushing her too hard? Was she pulling away? Or was this just part of who she was, independent, guarded, needing room to breathe? By the time morning came, I hadn't slept. I wanted to call her, to show up at her door, to make sure I wasn't losing her. But I forced myself to wait. 2 days later, she showed up at my place unannounced. She was dressed simply, her hair tied back, her face bare of makeup. But she was beautiful all the same. "Hey," she said softly. "Hey." There was a silence between us, heavy with everything unspoken. Finally, she stepped closer. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Sometimes I get overwhelmed. It's not you, it's me." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to erase the distance with one touch. So I pulled her into my arms, holding her as tightly as I could. She clung to me, burying her face against my chest, and in that moment, it felt like we had both been starving for the closeness. We didn't talk much that evening. Words weren't enough. Instead, we let our bodies speak. The kisses were urgent, desperate, filled with a need to prove something neither of us could say aloud. She pulled me down onto the couch, her hands tracing fire across my skin. Every touch was a promise, every breath a confession. When it was over, we lay tangled together, hearts still racing. She rested her head on my chest, her voice barely audible. "You make me feel safe," she whispered. The words hit me harder than I expected. Safe. That was what she needed from me, not just passion, not just desire, but safety. And I realized I would do anything to give her that. But giving someone safety meant giving them power, too. And that scared me. The more Emma became my world, the more I feared losing her. I caught myself noticing every glance she gave others, every unanswered text, every shift in her tone. Jealousy simmered under the surface, even when I tried to push it down. One evening, we met some of her friends at a rooftop bar. Emma was radiant, laughing and talking, her energy lighting up the whole table. I should have been proud to be by her side. But when one of her male friends leaned in a little too close, making her laugh, I felt the old anger stirring. On the way home, I couldn't hold it in. "You seem to enjoy his attention," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. Emma stopped walking, turning to face me. "Are you serious?" "I'm just saying, he was all over you. He's a friend. That's all." Her eyes narrowed, frustration flashing across her face. "You can't do this every time someone talks to me." I broke off, struggling with the storm inside me. "I can't help it. I don't want to lose you." Her expression softened, but only slightly. "Then trust me. If I wanted someone else, I wouldn't be here with you." Her words cut through the noise in my head. She was right. She had chosen me again and again. The problem wasn't her. It was me. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. She sighed, then slipped her hand into mine. "I don't want fights, okay? I want us. But you have to let me breathe." I nodded, though the fear inside me didn't vanish completely. Love, I was realizing, wasn't just about desire. It was about surrender. And surrender was the hardest thing I had ever done. Later that night, as we lay in bed, I studied her sleeping face. She looked peaceful, her lips parted slightly, her hand resting lightly on my chest. In that moment, I felt both the weight and the gift of what we shared. She was teaching me things I hadn't known I needed to learn: patience, vulnerability, trust. And though it terrified me, I knew I would keep learning, as long as it meant I could keep her. But storms have a way of brewing even in calm waters. And somewhere deep down, I sensed ours was coming. The tension between us had been simmering for days, a storm that refused to settle. I could feel it the moment I walked into her apartment that evening. Emma was there, sitting on the couch, her arms wrapped around her knees, staring at the floor. The light from the window slanted across her face, highlighting the shadow of worry etched into her features. "Emma," I said softly. She looked up, her eyes meeting mine with a mixture of fear and frustration. "We need to talk," she said. I nodded, my stomach tightening. This was it, the moment we had been avoiding, the storm that had been quietly building since that night at the rooftop bar, since my insecurities had bubbled to the surface. She stood and paced, her hands twisting in her hair. "I feel like sometimes you don't trust me," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "And I know you care. I know you love me. But it feels like you're trying to control something that isn't yours to control." I swallowed hard. She was right. My jealousy, my fears, my constant overthinking, it wasn't fair to her. "I know," I said quietly. I'm scared. Scared of losing you." She stopped, facing me, her eyes glistening. "And that's exactly why we can't have this us if you don't let me breathe. Love isn't about holding someone too tight. It's about trusting them with your heart, even when it's terrifying." The words cut deep. I had to choose: hold on too tightly and risk pushing her away, or let go enough to truly be together. And somehow, deep down, I knew the answer. I stepped closer, taking her hands in mine. "I trust you," I whispered. "I'm sorry for letting my fear get in the way. I promise to do better. To listen. To let us grow, not strangle what we have." Her lips trembled, a small smile breaking through the tension. "Do you mean that?" "I do," I said, my voice firm despite the racing of my heart. And then she kissed me. Not the teasing, urgent kiss of weeks before, but something deeper, slow, deliberate, full of emotion. Every fear, every insecurity, every unspoken word was released in that kiss. Our bodies pressed together, but the real connection was in our hearts, in the understanding that we were choosing each other, fully and completely. Hours passed, though it felt like minutes. We talked, cried, laughed, and kissed, unraveling all the tension that had built between us. We discovered the unspoken fears, the quiet insecurities, and the truths that had lingered beneath the surface. Each revelation made us closer, more connected, more alive. By the time the night faded into dawn, we were lying together on the couch, her head resting against my chest, my arms wrapped around her. There was a calmness now, a peace that had been missing. The storm had passed, leaving only the raw, honest reality of our love. The weeks that followed were different. We approached each other with more care, more awareness, and more passion. There was still desire, intense, fiery, unstoppable, but now it was coupled with understanding. Each kiss, each touch, each shared moment carried weight, significance, and a sense of mutual respect. One night, as we walked through the park under the stars, she slipped her hand into mine. "You know," she said softly, "I never thought I could feel this, safe and wild at the same time." I squeezed her hand, smiling down at her. "Neither did I. But that's what we are, safe and wild. Together." She leaned in, brushing her lips against my cheek before resting her head on my shoulder. "Together," she whispered. There were moments of quiet intimacy, lazy Sunday mornings with tangled sheets, whispered conversations that lasted until the sun rose, and the small, everyday acts that built the foundation of something lasting. We explored the depths of our desire, our curiosity, our limits, always respecting one another, always learning. And yet, the true strength of our bond wasn't in the passion or the intimacy, it was in the trust we had built, in the knowledge that even when fears arose, we would face them together. We grew together. We laughed together. We fought, and we healed. Each challenge made us stronger, each moment of passion brought us closer, each shared secret deepened the connection. By the time the summer ended, it felt as if our lives had been rewritten. Emma was no longer just someone I had met in a café on a warm spring night. She was part of me, inseparable from my thoughts, my dreams, my very heartbeat. And in the quiet moments, when the world seemed far away and it was just the two of us, I realized something profound: love wasn't about perfection. It wasn't about passion alone, or trust alone, or desire alone. It was about all of it together, raw, messy, thrilling, and true. And with Emma, I had found it. The fire, the vulnerability, the laughter, the passion, the tears, all of it. Together, we had built something that could withstand storms, survive distance, endure fear, and thrive in joy. I kissed her forehead gently, inhaling the scent of her hair, feeling the warmth of her body against mine. "I love you," I whispered, though words could never fully capture the depth of what I felt. She smiled, closing her eyes, letting herself melt into me. "I love you too," she said softly, and in that moment, I knew it was true. No more doubts. No more fear. Just us. And for the first time in my life, I knew that love, in all its complexity and intensity, could be this powerful and this perfect.